On all the free people of the world to help us. We are in a bad need for our medicine and the special filters to keep us alive. Without the medicine, we are dying a slow death. Renal patients are at high risk because we need to clean our blood every 2 days.
At the Rantisi Pediatric Hospital, where dozens of Gazan children are treated for chronic illnesses, ranging from cancer to renal failure, hospital officials said their stock of medicine has almost depleted.
Our hospital specializes in treating children who suffer from cancer, renal failure, and different life-threatening diseases. In this hospital, more than 50 medicines which are needed to treat the children are nowhere to be found, in addition to many hospital supplies.
With the ongoing Israeli blockade and the Ramallah government's refusal to deliver medicines to Gaza, chronically ill patients say they are caught between a rock and a hard place. Medical experts warn that because of lack of necessary medicines, patients could face an imminent death unless they receive the necessary treatment on time. The situation here is worse, especially for chronically ill patients who have to be on medication for long. Ashraf Shannon, Press TV Gaza.
Turkish activists have staged a protest in the capital Ankara to condemn Israel's latest airstrikes in Gaza. This comes as Turkey's foreign ministry has also called on Israel to stop disproportionate attacks on Palestinians. Press TV's Mehdi Gholizadeh reports from Ankara.
A group of Turkish activists have held a protest near the Israeli embassy in Ankara to condemn Israel's recent deadly strikes on the Gaza Strip. The protesters said the Israeli airstrikes target civilians in the coastal sliver. They stated that the U.S. has spoiled Israel by its support. The activists said the U.S. support for Israel is a main factor that has emboldened Israel to commit moves that are in violation of international law. The protest was organized by the Association of Human Rights and Solidarity for Oppressed People, which in its statement condemned Israel's stance towards Palestinians in Gaza.
We are here to protest against the Israeli airstrikes targeting Palestinians, and we want to say that our reaction will continue as long as Israel continues its oppression and occupation.
The activists called on the international community not to remain silent in the face of the Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip.
We call on the international community to take necessary measures to stop these brutal attacks. We want to say that our country will not be an accomplice to these crimes.
The activists called on Israel to stop its unacceptable policies towards the Gaza Strip. The Turkish activists move to condemn the Israeli strikes on Gaza comes as Turkey's foreign ministry, in a statement, described the attacks on Palestinians in Gaza as indiscriminate and disproportionate. Turkey's foreign ministry, in its statement, also voiced deep concern about the escalation of violence in the Gaza Strip. The statement called on the international community not to remain indifferent to these strikes and to take necessary measures for an urgent end to the tension in Gaza. Turkey's foreign ministry also called on Israel to end its unacceptable policies towards Gaza. Relations between Turkey and Israel hit rock bottom in 2010 after Israeli forces attacked a Gaza-bound humanitarian flotilla and killed 9 Turkish nationals. Ankara has repeatedly stated that Israel should apologize for the attack and pay compensation to the families of the victims before the normalization of bilateral ties. Israel has so far refused to agree with these conditions. Mehdi Gholizadeh, Press TV, Ankara.
Joint UN Arab League envoy to Syria, Kofi Annan, says he has presented a set of concrete proposals to help the situation in Syria and end the unrest there.
It's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult, but we have to have hope. I am optimistic. I'm optimistic for several reasons. First of all, I've been here for a very short period. Almost every Syrian I've met wants peace. They want the violence to stop. They want to move on with their lives. I presented a set of proposals, concrete proposals to the president, which will have a real impact on the ground once it is agreed. It will help launch the process, and it would also help the crisis on the ground.
He made the remarks after a second day of talks with President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. During the first round of talks, the Syrian president described political dialogue as meaningless as long as terrorist groups operate in Syria. Assad said these groups are creating chaos and seeking to destabilize the country.
Former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan's mission was to find a common ground between the Syrian government and oppositions. On his second day in Syria, Annan met with Mufti of the Republic Sheikh Ahmed Badruddin Hassoun, where they discussed the Syrian unrest and the clergy point of view. Afterwards, he met with opposition figures. One of them was lawyer Hassan Abdulazim, who previously had several meetings with U.S. Ambassador Robert Ford. Abdulazim listed to Annan several demands and recommendations.
Syrian government acceptance for Kofi Annan's proposal towards finding a solution for the unrest showed its readiness to help him fulfill the aim of his mission.
In his meeting with Annan, President Assad insisted that as long as there will be terrorist acts and chaos in the country, it will be hard to find a political solution.
Kofi Annan's meeting with opposition figures, clergy, and his two meetings with the president assure that this can actually help finding a solution to solve the unrest, as long as there will be no foreign intervention or help in whatsoever from foreign countries to armed groups.
Former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan came to Syria knowing that his job will not be an easy one. However, he expressed optimism after meeting President Bashar al-Assad. Rahshan Saglam, Press TV, Damascus.
The second court session looking into the biggest fraud case in Iran has come to an end. The lawyer of one of the main defendants quit for ethical reasons, and a second indictment was read out in court. Arash Khalatbari has more.
The second session of the biggest fraud case trial in Iran. At this stage, 32 people are standing trial in the huge corruption case. Approximately $2.6 billion was obtained through letter of credit fraud. The letters of credit were opened by various banks without any actual transaction taking place. One of the accused described what she called the suitcases used for bribes.
The number of suitcases bought was around 20 or 30, and in each of them we could fit around $200,000.
The face of the accused cannot be shown on the media.
The accused are in the court with their lawyers, but based on a section of Article 188 of Iran's criminal procedure, the media can make a report from the court proceedings, but cannot publish the name or identity of the accused or publish his or her picture. They can make a report as far as this article allows them to.
The lawyer for the main suspect in the case was not present and had quit, but had not officially informed the court of his decision. The representative of the prosecutor stated that the lawyer had quit because he believed that the money he had got from his client was dirty money. The main suspect chose to be silent until another lawyer is appointed. The judge stated that the next court is scheduled to be held on Saturday, March 17th, right before the Iranian New Year.
On the second session of the big fraud case trial, the representative of Tehran prosecutor read out the indictment. One of the charges on the indictment for the second person accused was corruption on earth, a charge that can carry the death penalty. Arash Khalatbari, Press TV, Tehran.
At least 11 workers have been killed in a fire in the Turkish city of Istanbul. The blaze engulfed a makeshift tent at the site of the construction of a mall. 15 workers were reportedly sleeping inside the tent, which was heated up by an electric heater. The blaze also spread to 2 adjacent tents. Rescuers have pulled out the bodies of 11 workers. Local officials say the fire might have been caused by a short circuit. Tens of thousands of anti-nuclear protesters have taken to the streets across the world, this to mark the first anniversary of the earthquake and tsunami that triggered a nuclear meltdown in Japan. Demonstrations took place in Germany, Switzerland, France, Spain, Belgium, Australia, and Taiwan. The protesters demand an end to the use of nuclear power. Protest rallies were also held in Japan. Tens of thousands held a moment of silence at a stadium in Koriyama in honor of the victims of the tragedy. They also demanded an end to nuclear energy in Japan and compensation for victims of the Fukushima atomic plant meltdown.
There were many memorial services held on Sunday all over Japan on the one-year anniversary of the country's earthquake and tsunami. In Tokyo, the government held a solemn memorial ceremony at the National Theater in Tokyo, where Emperor Akihito and Prime Minister Noda spoke. It was connected via live feed with memorial ceremonies which took place in each of the disaster-affected prefectures. And at 2:46 in the afternoon, there was a minute of silence for the victims and condolences for their families. Nearly 16,000 died in the disaster, and 3,900 are still missing. About 80,000 residents remain displaced by the nuclear meltdown and may not be able to go back to their homes for years or even decades. We're here in the heart of Tokyo in Shibuya tonight on the first anniversary when a disaster struck the country. We asked people two questions: how they felt about the disaster and the way their government handled it. As you can see, things appear near normal.
Many people are still suffering, right? And many people have evacuated from Fukushima Prefecture and North Japan, right? So the government has to provide the exact information, right? Collect information to them, because they are still feel imbalanced, they feel still scared.
I wanted the government to consult the locals faster about the reconstruction plans.
There are still many other issues that officials will need to address, such as the 20 to 25 million tons of rubble left on the land, decontamination of radioactive materials, the displaced people who need better housing, compensation for the victims, the nuclear crisis, including safety at the nuclear plant. Catherine Makino, Press TV in Tokyo.
And that's a wrap for this edition of Press TV's World News. Stick around, I'll be back on the top of the hour with our news in brief. Goodbye for now.